Welcome back, Cowboys Nation. If you couldn't tell by my deep sigh and by the lack of enthusiasm in my voice, you could say it's up in Buffalo. Um, the Cowboys lost an embarrassing game yesterday to the Buffalo Bills, and today David and I are going to talk about it. Stu is unable to join us today. He had a work commitment that I don't even know if he's home from yet. Feel bad for the kid. He texted us at 4 a.m. this morning, long before Spanky and I were even up, and said that he wouldn't be able to make it today because he was going to be at work for like 15 hours or something absurd today. So he has a valid excuse for missing this pod. He does not have a valid excuse for missing our preview pod for the Buffalo game. It's going to be the first episode that we've missed in terms of uploading. So please feel free to hound him for that. But honestly, maybe it kind of worked out because spoiler alert, we were pretty positive going into this game and we had some good things to say on the preview pod. And needless to say, just based on what we saw yesterday, they did not come to fruition. And I know Spanky wants to get us started here, so I'll just go ahead and tee you up here, kid.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and just get in the saddle and lead us off here?
Yeah. To everyone watching, listening, whatever you're doing, this just a little heads up. This might be long. Not only did the Cowboys get beat by the Bills, we also lost the game yesterday. It is very easy to take the easy way out and say if Sam Williams didn't jump and get that roughing call, D-Law getting that questionable. I have to say very questionable, especially with Josh Allen, the clips being posted of him and his flopping, a questionable roughing the passer call. That not a fumble, but was a fumble. Unfortunately, a little too early in the game for Mike to throw the challenge flag, which, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, but no one in that situation's throwing a challenge. I think that was 3 minutes into the game. No one's throwing a challenge flag. And I know I'm forgetting one more, the Tyler Smith holding call. All of those calls are the reason why some people on Twitter are not that upset about this game. But to me, this game felt like it was a 49ers level ass whooping with the penalty discipline of the game that we had in Philadelphia. And that's what it felt like to me. It felt like we lost the game, no doubt about it. The Bills beat us. But we also lost. Like, we did no justice in the penalty department. That Tyler Smith holding call, 100% was a holding, killed the drive. That was at least a field goal drive. At least. You have to imagine with Aubrey, that's a field goal. Sam Williams, if he blocks that punt, by the way, Bills go on to score on that drive. If he blocks that punt, we're in plus territory at the, 20 if he doesn't pick it up and just falls on the ball. So that's at least, I would say 7 from that spot, but we'll go 3. So that's a 10-point swing. The Tyler Smith was a 3-point swing. That's 13 points. You see where I'm going at? The Josh Allen roughing the passer call was about to be a field goal, but instead was a touchdown. So there's 17 points, 10 points, however you want to gauge it, if you want to be conservative or aggressive in that. We also did no justice in that. And so although it was a 49ers level ass whooping, it was also the penalty discipline of Philadelphia. And Burke, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Between this, the Philly loss, the Cardinals loss was a shock, but that's kind of water under the bridge, honestly, for all Cowboys fans at this point, because that was so early in the season. But between the 49ers, the Eagles, and this loss, can you rank our losses in terms of just how agitated you were leaving that game / how demoralized you were leaving that game?
Yeah. So despite the events that transpired yesterday, my number one is still the Niners game easily. Just because of the way, and we've said this before, but just the way that game was put on a pedestal by everyone in that locker room, and the way that they made it seem like it was our Super Bowl in week 5, and then just going out and laying a dud like that. that was inexcusable. So, and the feeling that I had after that loss and that we had when we came on here and ranted for like an hour about how upset and disappointed we were, that's definitely my one. The Cardinals one is definitely 4. Again, like you said, that's a great way of putting it. Water under the bridge. Josh Dobbs was elite when we played him. At that time, he's not anymore. He's now third string, healthy scratch on for the Vikings. So, not too worried about that one. Then 2 and 3 is tough. Um, I'm gonna say honestly, and I feel like we might differ here, but I'm honestly not sure. But for me, the Eagles loss goes number 2, just because that game felt so winnable, and it was a game that, especially with how we lost it on that final possession where we had first and goal from the 6, and then next thing you know, it's third and goal from like the 33. And just the fact that it's Philadelphia, it was in Philly. In terms of the division race right now, if we had won that game, we're still in line for a home playoff game and the first place lead in the division. So I'll say that one too, but this one is a close number 3. That's how I would rank them.
Yeah, and the reason why I say this is I don't want to say there's a script out to beating the Dallas Cowboys, but it is exactly kind of what every Cowboys fan that's a non-casual expected. The similarity throughout every single one of our losses is, drumroll please, believe it or not, it is our rushing defense. Every single
Oh,
one of our losses, teams have scored 2+ rushing touchdowns against us. Can you believe that? So
sadly, I can believe
yeah.
that.
And unfortunately, obviously, the 49ers was just a grand old ass whooping where we gave up 6 touchdowns. So only 2 rushing touchdowns was definitely less of a concern. But you see where I'm getting at here is
Mhm.
people are so quick to point the finger at 4. Some people are so quick to point the finger at Mike McCarthy. And some people are even so quick to point a finger at Mozzie Smith and the lack of Jonathan Hankins.
Yeah.
And so what I'm alluding to is our issues in the run game don't exist in the defensive line room. Where I'm the most scared of right now for the Dallas Cowboys is Jaron Curse, is Donovan Wilson, it is Damone Clark, and unfortunately, because we've been putting him on a pedestal lately, is Marquise Bell. And Cowboys fans, just another little tangent for you here. Cowboys had the most missed tackles dating back till 2020. And the missed tackles that we missed in this game was 17. And if you watch this game all the way through, like I did, you can see that I don't know if James Cook had Vaseline rubbed all over him or what, but he was impossible to bring down. And so many people are quick to be like, "Oh, Mozzie Smith, he's a one tech. He's supposed to be your run defender." If you look at James Cook's yards on rushing downs, where did he cash us, Bennett?
Outside the numbers.
And despite Demarcus
Or
Lawrence,
outside the hashes, sorry.
yeah,
Not numbers.
despite Demarcus Lawrence having a good PFF grade, you know what the most concerning thing is was our just ability to play physical, and that was
Mhm.
kind of, you know, all those losses also coexist with physicality too, when you
Yeah.
really think about it.
Mhm.
And it's tough. It's tough. And to go on to the question I asked you earlier, honestly, this is takes the cake for the worst loss in my opinion this year. And
Wow.
the only thing that in my reasoning is Philly we should have won. We lost that game. Philly didn't beat us. We came out of that being like we're gonna whoop their ass in Dallas. That's the thing. San Francisco, we're like fuck, but we kind of knew it was gonna happen. Be honest, like we're not these. I mean, we are, but that's it. It's all an act. We're actually kind of down to earth Cowboy fans. We're not going to walk in. And right now, if you asked me, even before the season, how many times do you beat the 49ers out of 10 times? It's probably 3 or 4 out of 10, being honest. Bet we beat them 40% of the time. But man, this is week 15. We are looking at Miami with Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. And then we're looking at Detroit with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And then we're looking at away playoff games. That's what we're looking at right now. And that's why it's so demoralizing to me is that's fine to be not physical and kind of looking ahead and, you know, yourself losing the game instead of them just running down the field with our fucking limp carcass behind them. But this game was a combination of both in week 15, in which we literally looked like the before bye week offense. Like McCarthy got outcoached.
Yep.
Dan Quinn got outcoached.
Severely.
And most importantly, is our offense couldn't move the ball besides, you know what? Tony Pollard looked damn fucking quick. He looked fast. He was hitting the hole hard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it sucks the most to me is it's week 15 and, you know, there hasn't been any doubts in my mind before this game post-bye that this has been a new Cowboys team. And this game just came to remind me, hey, no, we're the same Dallas Cowboys. And that's the toughest pill for me to swallow right now is we're the same Dallas Cowboys team. And unless we put on a showing in Miami, which, I mean, I think we need to all pray to Lord Jesus and go to church before the game because they have Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. Just to put things into perspective, Raheem Mostert has more touchdowns than the Giants, the Jets, the Steelers, the Patriots, all those bottom teams. Like, we need to get on our knees and pray, man, because if outside the hashes is an issue in the run game and we have two speedsters in Miami and Jahmyr Gibbs, Lord, Dan Quinn better put on a better performance.
Yeah. And so I can definitely see where you're coming from just in terms of saying that this is the most demoralizing loss. And the thing that I haven't been able to get over, more so just trying not to think about it today, is about how we've spent our entire season trying to claw back into first place to catch the Eagles. We finally do it, have a great win on Sunday Night Football, look like a complete football team. Everyone's talking about the Cowboys in a positive light for once. Daxon, the front runner for MVP, spotlight is on him. Nothing but good things are being said about the Cowboys in the media. They finally beat a good team. They're putting all these narratives to rest. And then they do the most Dallas Cowboys thing ever and just piss it all away. And that's what I haven't been able to really just process that. And it's just so frustrating, man. I mean, like as much as I could say, wish I could just sit here and say that I'm shocked that this happened. I'm not. And I know you're not either. And if you're a Cowboys fan that knows anything about who the Dallas Cowboys have been since the 1990s, this is right on par with exactly what they've been throughout David and I and Clayton's as well throughout our entire lives, is that they're going to be this team every year where they're going to make the playoffs. They'll beat the crap out of bad teams. They'll beat a couple, maybe one or two good teams, look good. They'll make the playoffs, and then they'll maybe win a wild card game and then crap to bed in the divisional game, early round exit. See you next year. And I'm not going to be Mr. Doom and Gloom and say, oh, that's our destiny, because I still do think that part of what we've been saying throughout this whole season is still true, and that this team still inspires more confidence in me than teams of the past years, because we know what this team looks like when we're firing on all cylinders, as we saw against Philadelphia. I mean, that's the closest thing that we've had to it. And this team, as of right now, the thing that I'm cautiously optimistic about, that's how I'm going to frame it, cautiously optimistic about, is that while, yes, the next 2 weeks are very scary and very daunting, they have a really, really good opportunity to be able to. I mean, there's no rest and there's no hiding from their flaws and from their weaknesses at this point. And if you don't think that everybody in that building knows that, you're absolutely delusional. You're facing, like David said, a team in the Dolphins and a team in the Lions, two of the best rushing offenses in football, and especially with the profile of running backs that they have, two guys with noses for the end zone in A-Chain and Mostert, who we're going to talk more about later this week. A couple guys next week in Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, who are going to be a big problem as well. But this is an opportunity to figure out what you're bad at really quickly and be able to learn from it. And I hope that they can do that, because as of right now, and it sucks that we're in this position and we're having to count on the Giants to we're counting on Tommy DeVito and the Giants to be able to pull out a game against the Eagles, which, I mean, we'll see how they look on Sunday Night Football, but I mean, that's living on a prayer, to quote Bon Jovi. That's it's very fruitful, wishful thinking, and it's disappointing because we, as much as some people might not want to admit this, we need a home playoff game. We do, especially in a wild card game. It's not as big of a deal. I feel like, because especially with how we're slated right now, if we're going up against like the winner of the NFC South, I don't really care where we play them. That's not a concern to me. No one in the NFC South scares me at all. But the numbers don't lie, and they put this graphic up um, during the game yesterday, but it was a difference, and obviously this was before the game went final yesterday, but it was a difference between the Cowboys splits at home and on the road this year. So I'll just read these out really quick. I'm sure if you watched the game yesterday, you probably saw this graphic pop up, but the Cowboys at home this year, 7-0, 40 points per game, 432 yards per game, 69 explosive plays. Nice. On the road this season, 3-3 record, well now 3-4. Going into yesterday's game, it was 24 points per game, 323 yards per game, and 39 explosive plays. Obviously, the points per game and the yards per game is going to take a massive hit after yesterday, and you're now 3-4 on the road. This team is an absolute juggernaut and a Super Bowl contender at home. If they were the one seed in the NFC, I would have the utmost confidence to say, give us any team, anytime, any place, anywhere. I don't care. I will take our odds at home. If you are going to sit here and try to tell me right now that this team is going to do exactly what they did last year and go win a road playoff game in the wild card game against Tampa Bay or New Orleans or maybe even Atlanta, if they decide to start giving their first round picks the football, I would say, yeah, that's no problem. But if you were to try to then turn around and tell me, hey, now go on the road and go beat a Niners team or an Eagles team or a Lions team, go on the road and go beat them, you're gonna have to sell me on that, because I don't see a way in which they can do that right now. I just don't. And it sucks that this is the reality and the situation that we're in, but you can only play the cards that you're dealt. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got. But yeah, that's just how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, and we're just gonna go on to offense, people. This is gonna be a pretty straightforward episode, as you can imagine. And I mean, where do I even start? I mean, the Zach Martin injury is definitely something to pay close attention on. And I don't want to seem like I'm selling right now, but I'm not rushing him back until playoffs, even if it's a shadow of a doubt. I mean, it's about time, and I know there's still. I mean, if DeVito or Kyler work a miracle, it's still a possibility that we could get the top seed or number 2 seed. So I want to hold out some hope, but I'm not risking Zach Martin for that hope. We have playoffs guaranteed right now. I'm not risking Zach Martin. It seemed like originally like a dead leg or something like that, but him not coming back in the game is kind of concerning towards me. But uh, clamped, I guess is the word I'm looking for. We were just clamped from top to bottom, from the opening hits on Dak while he was sliding, which 100p should be an ejection. I don't know how it's not.
Yeah.
But that was like crown of the head on a sliding quarterback. Like what are we doing here? But we were just clamped, simply put, clamped, out physicaled, clamped. They were tackling us kind of like how Drake Greenlaw and the 49ers tackled us, where they ran, hit, and talk shit. So that was something funny that we like preaching that we just don't do as well as the rest of the league, clearly. But we were clamped, and people are quick to throw shade on Dak Prescott. But I've seen and saw multiple plays and all 22 film of certain pass calls where they're like, "Oh, why is he holding on the ball so long?" Every single one of our wide receivers were covered. They were dropping 7, they were dropping 8, and still getting somehow a pass rush on us. And so I'm gonna try to look at this more optimistically, but we did have a stomach bug. So if there was a sword to fall on in terms of excuses, our tummies weren't feeling good all week, and we were probably pooping and not eating well and couldn't really do much because we were afraid we were going to poop our pants, and that's why we weren't as physical. So if there were to be an excuse, that would be mine. Damn, he just got rocked on that kickoff. But yeah, we were clamped. Ford didn't have his best game clearly, and his MVP race was fun. That was fun while it lasted.
Yep.
But unless somehow the Niners slip up. But man, it's demoralizing. It's demoralizing that in a game like that we're just not force feeding CD or Jake Ferguson or one of our playmakers. Definitely McCarthy's worst game post bye, I would say. He called a winning game in Philly. So I would argue that. But it was overall just demoralizing. That looked like old Cowboys. That looked like a Kellen Moore Cowboys team, and that was the scariest part. The whole time I'm like, what are we doing? We weren't running our best concepts. We weren't running screens. We were getting out physical. But the funniest part of it was our run game looked good, but we just couldn't use them. And so, yeah, that's all I got for offense. Kind of burn the tape game. But yeah, I'll kick it to you. Or actually, Burke, before we start this, rank your nervousness. Rank these 3 people in terms of how nervous you are.
Okay.
Mike McCarthy, Dak Prescott, Dan Quinn, and obviously their respective units that they coach.
I'm gonna say Dak Prescott. I'm gonna say a 3. I'm not worried about him yet. Um, I mean, it's his first bad game he's had since basically the Niners game. I mean, guess what, America? Dak Prescott is human. So
Yeah,
I'm
in
not
a
I'm
game
not
where Josh Allen had 95 passing yards, Dak Prescott's the person at hand right now, which is pretty
yeah.
funny.
Yeah, so I'm not that concerned about Dak. McCarthy, I'm gonna say a 6. Maybe a 6.5. Just because it was, and again, I don't know what happened between Philadelphia and this week, but it was like you said, I mean, you could tell from the first 2 drives that he was just calling conservatively. He just, I don't know, not a lot of pre-snap motion. I don't really know what happened this week. We'll have to go back and try to watch it on film if we can, but I mean, it just not winning football plays. I don't really know how else to explain it, but um, you know, clearly this was a game in which this game meant a lot more to the Bills. It's kind of like what we said about the Seattle game. This game meant way more to the Bills than it did to the Cowboys, clearly. And between the stomach bug and having clinched a playoff spot earlier in the day, it had all the makings of a Cowboys loss. Bad weather, hostile environment, it just had all the makings of a Cowboys loss. And it just sucks that I can't, that we're sitting here and berating this team rather than, talking about how awesome it was to be and beat the Buffalo Bills, throwback to the 90s. But yeah, I don't know. I'll say Dak a 3, McCarthy a 6.5, and I'm gonna crank the meter up here. I'm gonna say Dan Quinn. I think it's panic time. I didn't want to believe it after the Seattle game, but um, I think Dan Quinn and with the defense right now, and I've said this numerous times throughout the season that just in terms of defense, that I feel like between you, me, and Stu, I've always been the one that's been a little bit more weary about our defense, and I'm willing to put the panic meter at like an 8.5 right now. Depending
Yeah.
on how we look the next 2 weeks, we're looking at a 9+. But in an 8.5, I feel like is safe. The fact that this is Dan Quinn. What is this year 3 as DC for us? Year 4? I think it's year 3. And our issue is that we still can't stop the run, whether it's because we have undersized linebackers or our defensive line just gets no push. I don't know what it is. We'll have to go back and reevaluate. But I think it's officially time to panic for the defense right now. I mean, what transpired yesterday was inexcusable, and it's just hilarious. There's so many fair weather Cowboys fans out there that were just watching the game, checking the box score, just throwing the game all on Dak, which I'm not sitting here, and Spanky's, we're not sitting here saying, oh, Dak Prescott played a great game yesterday, because he didn't. And he acknowledged that in his post game. I mean, he didn't have his best game of the season, not even close. And the shift in the MVP odds reflect that, but there's not enough blame being placed on Dan Quinn right now. I mean, the Bills' game plan at halftime became blatantly obvious that they were just going to run the ball until we stopped it, and we couldn't stop it. Josh Allen had 7 completed passes for 94 yards, and we lost by what, 23, 21. So I don't know, man. Especially with the way the next 2 weeks are shaping up, it's officially time to panic.
Yeah. I would say I'm ranked accordingly to yours, but I would put my panic meter at Dan Quinn being probably a 9 right now. Just because post bye, this is the first time that Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott have looked human. I would put it that way. And this is not the first example of our defense just being Swiss cheese and almost, we've said it before and we'll say it again. We're like the biggest, baddest, tough guys when we're up, and when we're trailing, we have our tail between our legs, it looks like. And I'm not someone to really bash people and publicly, and especially on the internet, but J-Ron Curse has just, like, I don't know if he's injured. I'm hoping he is, but dude, he looks horrific. He's a liability on the field right now. So I think Donovan Wilson comes up with these splash plays, but he doesn't look like himself. What happened to the Donovan Wilson last year that we were hammering the table for a Pro Bowl and to get somewhere? He could have been all pro. Like, he was such a great safety last year. And then I don't know if you saw the clip, but Damone Clark on one James Cook rushing play got pushed 30 yards by the left tackle.
Yeah, and then he got hurt on the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, when we're up, we see all of our guys jawing and talking and all of that. But when we're down, it's like, y'all need to shut the fuck up sometimes. And it's just like, fucking play your game. You're getting paid millions of dollars. You're a Dallas Cowboys defender. You have to acknowledge that we're getting everyone's A game day in, day out, week in, week out. Teams will play us and just go a little bit harder than the rest. And it's like, our defense is just these, I want to call them just wannabes, man, is what I want to call them.
All bark,
Like,
no bite. I've said it before.
And it's like, holy fuck, what? Micah's on Bleacher Report live after this? Sick. Like, it's like they just don't. Too many just judgment calls, lack of effort, and overall, it's like how the tables have turned with the whole Dan Quinn or Mike McCarthy as our head coach next year argument. Because, man, if there's people still wanting Dan Quinn to lead this team next year as a head coach,
no shot.
Like, I would be terrified, to be completely honest with you right now, being like, what? So we need a new play caller and we're trusting Dan Quinn right now? It's like, we can easily slide a defensive coordinator in. Shout out Al Harris.
Yep.
But it's something that's along the defensive culture right now. And I'm not sniffing it out right now, but it might come clear in the coming weeks. If we know at home they're about to run the ball to the right outside the tackle with James Cook, I would like to imagine the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys could infer that there's a strong possibility that they're going to run to the right outside the tackle with James Cook. And it's one thing to say that now, but it's why didn't we stop it? / why couldn't we stop it? And it's just concerning. And so that's why he's at a 9. Mike's at a 4 for me. And quite honestly, he showed he's human. Everyone has bad calling games. But I don't know, he regressed a little bit, but knowing Mike, he's going to come out and against Miami on Christmas Eve, we're going to run 97% of plays with pre-snap motion. I'm holding out hope for him, but if we look the same against Miami, I'm cranking the switch up to probably an 8. And then Dak's a 2. Like you said before, it's his first bad game in a while. But even more than that, he did his best. He was running, he was making the throws needed, but it was the passing game, the wide receivers just got clamped. We got out physicaled. So although he wasn't a major reason we lost, he was still a reason, but I mean, those games happen, man. And I was kind of alluding to it. I probably didn't mention it on the pod because I didn't want it on record. But a game like this where we get punched in the mouth a little before playoffs is not always the worst thing in the world. It's not always the worst thing in the world. That's what I'm still attempting to be optimistic about. But yeah, are we doing good, bad, ugly for offense?
Yeah. I mean, and just to build on that just real quick. I mean, the one thing that I will say, and I know you just mentioned, your reason for hanging on to optimism as I'm trying to be as well. Obviously, we're not going to be the, Cowboys lose a week 15 regular season game and suddenly the sky's falling, season's over. We're not going to do that. But I will say that the one thing that I'm, again, cautiously optimistic about is that the Cowboys do respond very well after losses. And I'm hoping that, especially with the team that we're playing next week, it's unlike anything that we will have seen this year. That Miami team has a ton of speed. So, Dan Quinn, you better be ready because that team is whether you want to call them frauds or not, because they haven't beaten anyone and they just lost to the Titans on Monday Night Football last week, whatever you want to say about them, like, you better get ready because that's a fast team. And, we like to say that we have the fastest defensive football. Well, it's time to put up or shut up next week. But we'll save that for later this week when we do our preview. But so have good, bad, and ugly, just due to the circumstance of the game. This one, obviously, after wins, we usually like to do great, good, and mediocre. This one, let's just call it like it is. Let's just call it's bad, ugly, and pathetic.
Yeah.
We haven't had to break this one out since the Niners game. Even when we lost the Eagles game, I think it was good, bad, mediocre. But when you get blown out on national television, it's got to be bad, ugly, and pathetic. So I'll let you lead us off.
Yeah, I can have a lot.
Yeah, if you can consolidate it.
Yeah, my bad would be the they're like everything. Like
No,
I just want to put everything under the bad, ugly, horrific.
I know.
But
Remember, bad is supposed to be the best out of these three.
yeah, I
which
guess
is absurd.
yeah, I guess the best
Brandon
worst
Aubrey.
thing. Yeah.
well, no, he was good. He was good.
I'll say
Brandon
bad
Aubrey.
was definitely the Mike McCarthy regression, and I'm kind of just alluded to it before, but I think that's only bad because I'm hoping that next week it's different. And so that's why I'm cautiously optimistic on that, but he had a bad game.
Yeah.
My ugly would be the grit of this team. This team
Mm,
is preaches grit, and this team preaches being the big bad wolf. And once we get punched in the mouth, it's like that's when grit's supposed to happen. Grit is supposed to happen in the face of adversity. And the thing is, we're only showing our grit when we're up, and it's just it's hypocritical. It doesn't make sense. That's not grit. And we preach grit, and I know it's written on the locker room wall too, but we're just not. And my horrific would be just all around just the lack of physicality between our run game. Not Our run game actually looked decent, but in the first kind of little bit, but I mean, just our offensive line is supposed to be a physical group. They get bitched. Our defensive line is supposed to be a, an all pro, maybe a depoy, and a really great probable Pro Bowler, and Demarcus Lawrence. And we just got bitched up and down the field. I mean, Seattle went up and down the field on us, and our offense was on, so that was fine. But when our offense isn't on, and our defense is supposed to be the big bad wolves and stopping them, because I mean, the 49, or I mean, the Bills' offense is Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and James Cook. There's not a lot of talent outside that, unless you want to add the tight ends into that. But even so, they're tight ends. I mean, they're no Kelsey, they're no Andrews, so I'm not scared of them. But it's like we knew what they were gonna do. We knew what we needed to do, and we just couldn't do it. And it's pathetic. And hopefully we were looking at Miami, but yeah.
yeah, those are really good picks. Um, okay, so I'm actually gonna work. So I'm gonna go a little bit differently, just because I don't even know something that I could even relatively say was like good for what I would put in bad. So I'm gonna work bottom up. I'm gonna start with pathetic. I'm gonna say just the defense as a unit. Um, I mean, I already talked about it before, but and I've said this before. I said this after the San Francisco game, but all bark, no bite. That's been my line with this defense pretty much all season. And even when we've been blowing teams out, like, yeah, it's awesome to watch, Deron Bland break that record. And, was I up and shouting on Thanksgiving when that happened? Like, yeah, that's awesome. But, you always, if you're a realistic fan, you always have the thought in the back of your head of, okay, yeah, this is, the Commanders, or, oh, we're playing the Panthers, or, oh, we're playing the Giants. Like who cares? If you can't do it against the good teams, it doesn't matter. And just as I already said, defense was absolutely pathetic yesterday. You knew every single time, especially once we got into the second half, that their game plan was going to be, let's just hand the ball, let's run an outside zone to James Cook until they can't stop it, and we couldn't stop it. And it's embarrassing to know that we literally, if you were watching the game and have any football sense, you knew exactly what was coming every single time, and they couldn't do anything about it. And so that was just frustrating. Like I said, Dan Quinn, wake up, smell the roses, because we're not out of this gauntlet yet, and we've got a long way to go until the playoffs, and we've got a lot to prove on that side of the ball. So that's going to be my pathetic, is just the defense. My ugly is going to be, and I'm going to keep this one general too. I'm going to say um, the offense as a whole. And particularly when I say this, I'm not talking about Tony Pollard, because he actually looked pretty solid yesterday. And if we had kept that game close, I think we would have been looking at a Tony Pollard like 120-yard game. Just the way that he was running it, he looked really good. But specifically, when I say the offense as a whole, I mean that, and we talked about this in our group chat yesterday, but this looked like the 2022 Dallas Cowboys offense, where just the receivers couldn't get open. There was zero separation. The O-line was Swiss cheese. Terrence Steele has reverted back to being an absolute turnstile. Tyler Smith had easily his worst game of the season yesterday. Tyron Smith looked human yesterday for the first time in a long time. That hurt to see. Obviously, Zach Martin went down. Tyler Biadasz didn't play well. O-line was terrible. That's a concern. Not gonna raise the red flag yet until we see what happens after next week. But um, I do want to give Dak a little bit of a shred of credit for trying to his very, very best to make it work yesterday. It just wasn't going to happen. I think the only play that I can remember visible separation on was the deep shot to Cooks on the opening
Yeah,
drive that
yeah.
Dak missed by what 3 yards over on the overthrow. That's the only visible separation that I can really remember. Other than that, it was like watching it literally felt like just watching the Niners game on repeat. Like we were just clamped. Everyone was clamped. No one was getting open. The thing that they talked about on Sunday Night Football, and if you're listening to this and you watch that Sunday Night Football game against the Eagles, the whole point of this Texas Coast offense is that by the time Dak gets to his back foot and the final step in his 3-step drop, he's already knowing where he's going with the football. The Texas Coast offense is designed for him to get the ball out quickly and not have to overthink and make dumb decisions and try to force passes like he did last year. Kellen Moore's offense was designed with all these intricate and complex route trees and schemes that literally just never worked. And that's I know Chargers fans have felt that frustration as well. But with what we saw yesterday, the only way that the Texas Coast offense works is if guys have separation and guys get open. That's why you've seen a less of an infusion of Michael Gallup, and that's why we let Noah Brown walk, and that's why we traded for Brandon Cooks. That's why we've been giving Jalen Tolbert more snaps, because you have to have guys that can separate so that by the time Dak gets to the end of his 3-step drop and he does his quick scan, he's gonna look for the first open guy that he sees and hit him. And it's worked for the majority of this season. But when your O line is an absolute turnstile and your receivers don't get open, your quarterback's probably not going to play well. And that's exactly what we saw yesterday. So that's going to be my ugly. And then I'll keep it short on my bad. But my bad is just going to be um, I really liked what you said about just the lack of grit. I'm just going to say just team mentality as a whole, and just the fact that ever since I heard this thought from one of our buddies back when we were in school, and as soon as I say it, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about that said this, but the whole Dallas Cowboy Country Club mindset, and that when you're a Dallas Cowboy, you have to have the expectation, like you said, that a team is going to come out and they're going to give you a little bit extra because they know the game's going to be on national TV. They know that, everyone watches the Cowboys. It's a really big opportunity for players to, showcase what they can do on a really big stage. And the Cowboys, there's not, and I feel less strongly about this in terms of just certain players than I have in the past, but it's clear that there's some players that just seem like they're along for the ride. And like I said, all bark, no bite. One of them, sorry, hate to say it, Ron Curse, all bark, no bite. You're supposed to be the guy, the leader of the secondary. Wear the green dot on your helmet. Like you're supposed to be the guy, and you're unplayable. With him, it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. He looked great against Philadelphia. He was unplayable yesterday, and it's so frustrating. We've seen it from him all season, and this isn't just a Ron Curse rant, but just the Dallas Country Club mindset of just, oh, we're the Dallas Cowboys, things are going to be handed to us. Oh, week 5 against the 49ers. Yeah, we're going to tell everyone that it's our Super Bowl and that we're out here hungry for revenge, and this game is going to be handed to us because we're the Dallas Cowboys. Oh, we can play like complete trash against the Arizona Cardinals and sleepwalk through 3/4 of the game, and we're still going to find a way to win because we're the Dallas Cowboys. And then, like, the reality is that, I mean, that's obviously just not true. It's the NFL. Anything can happen. Anyone can beat anyone at any given time, and they need to act like it. They need to act like every time that you put that helmet on and you wear that star, that it's a privilege. It's not given, it's earned. And with the Dallas Cowboys, when you wear that star on your helmet, you're representing not only yourself and the other guys with you on that roster, you're representing an organization and a great history, and they need to start acting like it. Because what transpired yesterday and what we saw against like the 49ers, that's inexcusable, and that can't happen. It just simply cannot happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Just got fired
there's
up there.
Burke's.
Sorry.
Yeah, there's Burke's TED Talk.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is what it is. I don't know how we could be on the Dallas Cowboys and know we get everyone's A game, but yet be so lackadaisical against teams, acting like we're just gonna show up and beat anyone because we're us. It's the damn NFL. That doesn't happen. So, yeah. I mean, I don't really have, guess, defense. Just
I think it's
shit.
just cover zero.
Yeah, defense just shit. Offense just shit. Special teams still elite, so that's something we'll hold on to.
Except for Sam Williams.
Except for Sam Williams, who leads the league in special teams penalties, if you guys didn't know. But my cover zero take is going to be interesting.
Okay.
This is Dan Quinn's final season as a Dallas Cowboy staff member. Everyone knows he's on a contract year. He came back to try to win the bowl. I'm not saying we don't win the bowl. I'm not saying we do, but obviously you know where I stand, hoping we win the bowl. But I think either way, Dan Quinn goes to either Carolina, to the NFC South again, or to
The Chargers.
The Chargers.
Yeah.
But it's his final season, and we better. I mean, going into the season, you telling me it's Dan Quinn's final season, I'm like, fuck. And now I'm like, you know what? If we were going to lose one of our cornerstone pieces of the Dallas Cowboys, it would be him before anyone else.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, if it comes down to him or Mike McCarthy, it's Mike McCarthy without a shadow of a doubt at this point. And, you know, RJ Ochoa said it when he came on here. I mean, despite what's eluded him and, you know, being able to make it past the divisional round since he's been the Cowboys coach, I mean, the reality of it is he's going to the playoffs for, you know, his third time in 4 seasons. And he's led this team to 3 straight 10+ win seasons. And it's a very hard thing to do in the NFL. Say what you want about the Cowboys don't play anyone, or, you know, half of our division sucks. Like, we have 4 free wins, but it doesn't matter. It's the NFL. I mean, like I said before, anyone can beat anyone at any given time. And what Mike McCarthy has done to this team and this locker room, I mean, you can tell that this team loves him. You know, when he got back from surgery during the Philly week and they're